Hello and welcome back to the Writer in White. I am the writer, I am Caleb, and I am so thankful that you chose to join me today. Today we will be running through the December wrap-up, going over things that happened in December, media, storytelling, books, things that came out that I got to engage with, a little bit about what I did, things that I accomplished in December, and leading into things looking to January and 2022. December was a very, very quiet month. I was almost completely radio silent on social media. Took a real step back there. Published almost nothing on my website as well. And a lot of that was due to family stuff, the holidays, trying to spend more time with the people that I was able to spend time with close by. I'm fortunate enough to be close to my parents to spend time with them during the holidays and just take a step back and focus on what's important. So prioritize time with them, and I think that was a really good decision. But that meant less got done with the website and other platforms. Had lots of good ideas for social media engagement, for YouTube videos, and so a lot of those are going to be moved and implemented hopefully soon, looking to beginning of January. So a lot of the behind the scenes work has been done, preparation, groundwork, and looking forward to creating more, engaging more with this community, with other communities focused on stories and storytelling. Big thing that we can start with, my TBR list, my reading list for December is basically unchanged. I read barely anything during the month, again, just because I was trying to prioritize time elsewhere, and that kind of got put on the back burner for the time being. On a good note, I didn't buy more books and I didn't add to it, which is a trap I fall into a lot, especially when I'm not reading as often. I get kind of the FOMO of wanting to read as much as I can, and then I feel bad, and so I build up the TBR list, but I avoided that. I didn't buy any more books. I know it is long enough already. I have plenty of books to read, plenty that will be there when I'm ready to get to them, and I know the digital one, I have a digital one that is books that I want to buy, books that I want to have on my TBR stack, but trying to be a little bit more responsible, a little more restrained in how and when those get added to the library. So stack is still there. Lots of books I'm really excited about. Lots of upcoming books for this year that I'm hoping to snag, but gonna work through the stack that I have currently. In the end of November, we saw the release from Wizards of the Coast in Strix Haven, A Curriculum of Chaos, their most recent adventure book. And this is the intersection, once again, of Magic the Gathering with 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I was able to look at it briefly when it first came out, but wasn't able to do an in-depth read and analysis until much later, which is why my review of it won't be coming out until beginning of January. I really enjoyed the book. I think it does a very good job of incorporating magic into the setting, the adventure, the character creation. It's a really good demonstration of how a high magic setting can implement magic in many different ways, a lot of which are more so than low magic or traditional fantasy setting where magic might exist. But in Strixhaven specifically, it's a school for mages. Almost all the students are imagined to be mages in some capacity, so magic is ingrained in so much of the life there. So it does a really good job of that. The adventures are a little bit interesting. The way the adventure of Strixhaven works is characters are students, and the adventure begins with them entering as first year students. So it goes, each adventure or each chapter is a different year for them at school. So there's 4 adventures for each of the 4 years as students. The adventures themselves the published adventures are only small snapshots of each of those years. So there's 2 or 3 key moments, a couple others that are explored briefly, or events that happen, but it falls kind of into the trap that early 5th edition adventures fell into, in that it covers a long period of time with very little actual published material for that time comparatively. It has a lot of material. And the encounters in Strix Haven I actually really like. They're very diverse and they reward creative players. But for an entire year and only those few snapshots, it leaves the burden on the dungeon master to decide whether or not their plan is to narratively explore what happens outside those encounters or to build them and flesh them out themselves. So either way, it ends up being more work for dungeon masters. So I would encourage DMs looking to incorporate the Strix Haven adventure or to run the Strix Haven adventure to keep that in mind when looking and preparing to run this adventure. I think one of the great resources that it offers is that of inspiration, whether that's incorporating a magic academy or mage's school into an original setting or an established one. Strix Haven can be drawn one-to-one. It can be reinvented for a different setting such as Eberron or Forgotten Realms, or thrown into an original campaign or setting of your own making. I think it has, like I said earlier, the great implementation of magic within the setting, within the characters, within the adventure, and that's all reflected in how the setting is broken down. The spells, the backgrounds, and other aspects of character creation, they all take into account that high magic setting where magic is suffused within nearly every aspect. Some in major ways, some in more minor ways, but it is there. So keep that in mind if you're looking to implement or draw inspiration from the book, especially in a lower magic or even regular fantasy where magic exists, but might not have the same role that it would at a school like Strix Haven. So I think it's a great book. I think it's an excellent resource. I love it as an intersection once again between Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm excited to see what other dungeon masters are able to incorporate with it, how they're able to draw inspiration, and I'm hoping that I get to be a part of an adventure set within Strix Haven. I think it's a great setting. As we wrap up December, we get to look gratefully at the end of the first season of The Wheel of Time. I was very excited for this show when it was first announced. I was very excited for it when I finished The Eye of the World, which is the first book in the Wheel of Time book series by Robert Jordan. I was excited to have an epic fantasy back in as a show, because I love Game of Thrones, I love Lord of the Rings, I love those types of adaptations, and I love seeing how directors, showrunners, writers take established media and then try to retell it, or how they can tell that story through film. And I was excited to see that Amazon put a bunch of money and a bunch of effort towards it, and I can say I was very happy with season 1. It's concluded. I've seen the end of it. No major spoilers here, but I understood, looking back at some of the things that director said. Brandon Sanderson has been engaging with fans through social media, Reddit, through his blog, talking about some of the decisions that they made, how some of them diverged from the book, or just from the source material in general, how they had to omit certain things, how they have to retell certain things, because there's no way to completely port a book like the Wheel of Time books over into a show or a movie. We saw that with Lord of the Rings. We've seen that with Game of Thrones. We're going to see it with these new IPs. All the decisions I understood. That to say, I didn't necessarily agree with all of them. Not all of them I liked, that they had to be retold in different ways, but I understood why certain things had to be done differently. Because if there's no good way to do it, because there are two ways that you fall into this. You either tell the story exactly how it is in the books, that is word for word, scene for scene, however you perceive that. And if you do that, the season would be dozens and dozens and dozens of hours, hundreds of hours maybe. And it would be so boring because it would be so much time, and people would complain that nothing was happening, it's too boring. Then if you have the other way, which is usually how these shows have to be done because they have a time limit and a time crunch and they have to be done in a reasonable amount of time, is they omit things, they retell things, they have to adapt them slightly differently. And then you have the other people complaining, saying they're not staying true to the source material, they missed the best part, they're doing it wrong, they're not honoring it the way it should be. There's no way to please everyone. But all that said, for Wheel of Time, I liked what they did. I enjoyed the season as someone who is new to the series, but also as someone who has read the book. I'm very excited to see where season 2 goes, because in the finale specifically, there were some pretty dramatic changes that they took from the books. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see how they continue to adapt Robert Jordan's work and to see where that goes. And continuing with shows, December saw the release of The Witcher Season 2. I loved this season. I love The Witcher. I'm a huge Witcher fan. I read the books several years ago. I've read all of them and I love them for different reasons, and I love a lot of fantasy. I played The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt, one of my favorite games to play, and we'll probably be doing a replay of it soon just because it's such a good storytelling medium. Saw The Witcher Season 1, loved it. I'm probably one of the very few people who actually really enjoyed the split timeline decision that they made for Season 1, even though it was a little bit hard to follow at certain points, especially on the first watch through, when you're not necessarily aware of it, or you don't catch those subtle clues within the script. I found that was a really creative way for them to tell it, because it felt almost like an homage to Sapkowski's storytelling in the books, because in the books they're not always clear about when certain events are happening, or if you're jumping between books or the short stories, because there is obviously the main storyline of Geralt and Ciri and Yennefer through the main portion of the books. But looking at The Last Wish as a book that is a collection of short stories, some of the other books, they have big time jumps. So I think they actually did it really well. I think people who are critical of Season 1, if they went back and watched it again with the context of it being fragmented timelines in a sense, they would receive it a little bit better. I like creative storytelling. I think it was intentional on their part, and I think it was necessary for them to avoid falling into traps of backstory, which usually require either flashbacks or exposition. And in both flashbacks and exposition can get really, really tedious for an audience. So I think they did a really good job of utilizing the different timelines, and they even got to poke fun at it in Season 2, which I thought was a really good example of how self-aware they are and how they can have fun at kind of their own expense. Regarding Season 2, I think it follows a much more linear timeline, so I think people who had some issues with the storytelling of Season 1 will receive it much, much better. I loved the work they did. I could tell that they had more opportunities to do what they wanted. The sets felt bigger, they felt more ambitious, the characters were diverse, they were drawing in multiple storylines, and I loved that this season did it. It tackled the topic, or the subject, moreover, of establishing where the series is going. Season 1 is a lot of the introduction, the world, the characters, who the players are. Season 2 felt like the introduction to the why, the what. How are things happening? What's going on in the world? We see politics beginning to emerge. We find the key players. Seeing Graham McTavish as Dijkstra was brilliant. It makes me really excited for the things that he's going to incorporate into that. We see the kings and queens of the North meeting in councils. We see the brotherhood and of mages. We see the elves starting their kind of divergence. How do they fit into society? Should they fit into society? What compromises will people make? So the politics and contentions of the continent, very, very excited for. Very, very hopeful for that. And we also see about the most important characters. We see for Geralt how far and what he will do to protect Ciri. We see that early on in the season, and we see his commitment to her very, very clearly explained, which is so important for the story. and we see Ciri's growth. We see her starting to actualize some of her own desires, starting to take ownership, starting to question, but also learning who to trust. And we see why she is so important. We see why different groups want her, different ways people are motivated to find her, to stop her, to capture her, why she is so important. Because she is the main character. She is the story of The Witcher. It's about Geralt, and we follow him through most of it, but it is really the story of Ciri. And I think this season did a really good job of setting up a lot of what's going to come. Makes me so excited for season 3. I think we're going to see a lot more of the politics. We're going to see a lot more of the intrigue and the large world that Sapkowski created in The Witcher that we've only really been able to explore kind of in the books, a lot in the games, and now we get to see visually, beautifully brought to life by these incredible actors, a beautiful musical score, fantastic visual effects, and now the story. And I'm very excited and confident that the show is in good hands. And looking at upcoming media or projects or stories that I'm looking forward to, first and foremost, one that I've been looking forward to for a very long time, since it was announced, the Book of Boba Fett just premiered this last week at this point in recording the video. Episode 1 dropped on Disney+. It was a mix of an episode between going right into the action or the situation where we find the characters that we left after Mandalorian, and also seeing a little bit of backstory, filling in gaps between Return of the Jedi and where we meet Boba Fett in the most recent season of The Mandalorian. So optimistic. I think it's a very interesting take whether or not they decide to leave the focus of this season on Fett and Fennec Shard really focusing on being a crime boss, being a daimyo, and incorporating himself back into this criminal life, bounty hunting syndicate style, almost sub-civilization that is on Tatooine. Or if there will be another shoe that drops soon, and another kind of hook that brings the characters to something else. But I like the backstory that's being brought in. The actor Tamora Morrison is doing a great job, I think. Some of the very subtle things he's doing, I believe he is New Zealander, and there are small things that he's incorporating into the character, which I think is brilliant, and I think is a great way to showcase both his talent and ways that we can build out the character of Boba Fett. Because there is so much that is unknown about the character. We have kind of the origin, but there's a lot of story there that is non-canon through the books and through other stuff that has been put out there, but I'm excited to see what they actually nailed down and how they create the character. There are 2 book series that are upcoming that I'm very excited about. Both of these that are not ones that I have actually read anything by these authors before, and they're not anything that any immediate friends of mine have read. But there is the Bloodsword Saga by the author is John Gwynne, and the first 2 books are out. I'm not sure if it is just those 2 books, if he has more planned, or if that's going to be it. They look fantastic. I know the first book was received really, really well. The next book, or book 2, is coming in April, and I'll put the cover art here on the screen, but it's the cover art that caught my attention. They're beautiful design covers, and on those alone, that got my attention. I immediately went and looked for reviews. People love the books, and I'm excited for those to come out. I might have to expedite my reading list to continue to make progress so that I'm available to read those once book 2 drops, beginning of April, I believe. The other series that I'm excited to potentially get into is the Locked Tomb series. So Gideon the Ninth, Harrow the Ninth. The author is from New Zealand, I believe. Probably the biggest reason I'm most excited about it is because through social media I have a couple connections and people I follow who are cosplayers and artists, and the stuff that they have been producing for the Locked Tomb series is just gorgeous. And there's so much hype and buzz about those books that it was enough to get me interested. I went and looked at it, and the premise of the first book looks totally original, really, really unique, a really interesting perspective. I saw the buzz about character art and then saw reviews and people loved it, so I think that might have to be added to the TBR list at some point as well. I believe the first 2 books are out. The next one comes out this year, and there's at least one more planned after that, but I don't know if it has an official release date yet. But the author is a fantastic storyteller from what I've heard. People love her work, and people love these books, so that will probably be added in very, very quickly as well. And as we are at the end of December, looking at the start of January, it's a brand new year. And for me, it's an interesting milestone because January will be the 1 year, I believe the 1 year anniversary of my website going up, the blog website I have up, thewriterinwhite.com. And that was kind of the first big step in kind of launching this. I'm very proud of everything I accomplished through that. Some of the analyses that I had, I received 2,500 views across 79 different posts I had. I know that compared to other creators, that's a really small number, but for me, I was really proud of that. And even though it was inconsistent, it wasn't. It was a lot of learning. I'm excited to see where I can take that moving forward. My hope is to have a total facelift on the website, clean it up a little bit, going into this second year of producing content for that platform. So facelift a little bit, tidying up, maybe change the style a little bit. So that should be going up soon. Fingers crossed on productivity. So I will continue to do stuff for the website, from book reviews, Dungeons and Dragons content, journaling, things that I think are worthwhile either to say or for people to read, hopefully that they can make an impact on people. I'm going to continue having my own stories posted there, so I'm excited for that. I'm also going to be diving deep into this, so YouTube. Again, a huge learning curve, a brand new platform that there's so much to learn about. I'm excited for what I've already learned. I am excited for so much more that I can learn. My hope is to continue to do things like this, so monthly recaps. I want to start doing more specific videos. I have ideas for Dungeons and Dragons specific content. There will be videos for NaNoWriMo that will be going up soon. Videos that should have been done much sooner, but again, because of the busyness of the holiday season and most of January, or most of December, pardon me, those videos will be pushed. My hope is to do a recap and also to do a lessons learned video from NaNoWriMo 2021. And a couple other video ideas. Right now, this is all brand new. This is a lot of experimentation. So we'll see what works. I will see what I enjoy, what I can actually create, and what's too ambitious, and what sticks, depending on how successful things might or might not be. And my hope is to continue with my own writing and storytelling as much as I can into this new year. My hope is to get back into consistent work on the novel I've been writing. It's been on hiatus or just been sitting for a while because it's very much in that edit and revision stage where I go through big stages of being super motivated and wanting to do a ton of work and being really productive, and then I hit the wall and it stops, and I want nothing to do with that story. I want to write something different. I don't want to do edits. I want to create, or just want nothing to do with writing at all. So my hope is to get back into consistency with that so I can be productive and hopefully move that towards what its next stages will be. In addition to that, my hope is to continue to polish and work through the Alarian Chronicle, the free series that I have on my website. Posts are going up semi-regularly. We're getting close to the end of where this kind of first act or first arc will be concluding. The story follows loosely the very first Dungeons and Dragons campaign that my friends and I were a part of, and they were gracious enough to let me join. And this story is a narrative rework of a lot of the things that happened there. So my hope is to finish that fairly soon. And I have a couple ideas with things I want to do with it, polishing it up and making it closer to the story that I know it can be. And as I'm sure many creators, artists, and creators of all kinds know, January is a really tough time for a lot of folks. Streamers and video creators see their reviews plummet. Artists and craftspeople see their sales drop off, and it's a really tough time for a lot of creators. So I know having this be one of the early months in me launching into a big creative endeavor, one of my big hopes is just to not be discouraged, and is to create and use this month as a foundation to launch into more content, rather than be discouraged, be obsessed with numbers, be obsessed with engagement. I don't want to be bothered by any of that. It's a useful tool, but I don't want to obsess. And so my hope is to take January as learning, as time to create, as time to build the foundation, and go from here. So my hope is to encourage one another and to not be discouraged by what can be a really difficult month, and to move in a positive direction. So in January, I will be learning a lot from the get-go. If I can keep a schedule, I'll take that as a win. If I can see some growth in my own skill, that's absolutely a success. If I can not get discouraged, if I can continue to move forward and create and do what I want to do and see the path forward, that will absolutely be a win. And I'm excited to get there. I'm nervous and anxious as you can imagine, because this is so brand new, and there's a lot to learn. But I'm excited for the future. I'm hopeful, despite some of the apprehensions that I might have. But thank you guys once again for joining me. Remember, you matter and your story is important, and it is up to you to decide how and when you decide to share it with the world. See you next time.